If you could spend a day with an entrepreneur, who would you spend a day with?
I would spend the day with Henry Ford.
Would you mind telling me an experience that changed you from a time you served in your mission?
I served in Berlin, Germany.
What has formed you into who you are today?
There's been a lot in my life that has made me who I am today.
Why do you think so big? Where did it come from?
I honestly attribute a lot of it to my dad.
How do you surround yourself with people that are like-minded?
I'm going to give a funny answer.
Did you have any fear starting this new company?
I honestly didn't.
Walk me through what lessons that you've learned, some of the most impactful things that your parents have taught you.
Love everyone and being a peacemaker.
What motivates you? Why do you pursue what you're doing?
Well, I believe all of us have a certain potential.
Welcome back to the Meet McKay Show. Today we have another, yet again, legend in the house. We have Weston Wardrop with us today. I met Weston my senior year in high school, and he's just one of those guys that you always need to have around you. We talked for quite a bit when I got back from my mission, and then randomly we just didn't talk for 2 years, and just recently we've reconnected again. But again, Weston's one of those guys that you really just always want in your corner because he's always got an idea. He's always just thinking bigger. Whatever you can think of that's big, he's thinking bigger. And so I love having people like Weston in my life to be able to push me to think bigger and to open the whole world to me. So welcome, Weston, and thank you for joining us.
Dude, thank you. That was super nice of you to say all that about me. McKay is the best. McKay is the best leader
Oh my
I know.
gosh.
So,
Well, thank you. That's very kind. But today I want to dive into you, what makes you tick, your past, your present, what you want to do in the future, the business endeavors. We'll talk a little bit about your startup company that you have going on now, obstacles, victories, everything in between. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. When somebody asks, who is Weston Wardrop or your story or your background, walk me through it. Take a couple minutes if you want. Don't rush it. I want to hear who Weston Wardrop is and what has formed you into who you are today.
dang, that's a really good question. I would say there's been a lot, I guess, in my life that has made me who I am today. When I was really little, my mom had heard from the doctors that she had this disease, Scleroderma. And so that made my parents move to China when I was about 6 years old, or 5 or 6, somewhere in those years, for several months. And I didn't know if I'd see my mom again. So I think really early on in life, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, I felt like I had to rely on myself a little bit. Not having parents around at that age was like pretty hard. But I think that really defined me moving forward to becoming like a very independent person and not always having to rely heavily on like my mom and dad taking care of everything and this and that. Because then like about 5 or 6 years later, we picked up and moved to Florida. Me, my brother, and my parents. The rest of my siblings were already graduated from high school, out of the house. We moved to Florida, didn't know anybody. I trained at an intensive tennis academy, and that was another big moment in my life, I guess, a defining moment. Being around all the other kids at the academy were much older, and I had to stick up for my faith and my belief, and that kind of threw me in the ringer a lot earlier than most people. And then again, when I met McKay, I was living in Provo. So I moved from Florida back to Utah, where I had spent most of my life. And then I decided, well, I guess not really me. I had this inspiration come from God that I should move to Arizona. No idea why. And so I moved to Arizona. I met McKay, and super glad I did. And so I think there's been a lot of things that have happened throughout my life up until now. And even me serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ and living in a different country for 2 years. There's been a lot of things that have forced me in my life to become a very independent person, to the point now where rather than relying on somebody else or working a certain job, I've decided to go ahead and start my own company. So yeah.
Very cool.
Good question.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Would you mind giving me a brief 101 of the disease that your mom had and how that impacted you at an early age?
Yeah. I mean, so the disease, it's Scleroderma. It's the hardening of skin. So it would be like, also within the body, there's like, it can like choke out your heart or other organs basically. And it's like when she has shots from these doctors, they have to use the biggest needles that they have, and like the big fat boys, which are super painful. But when I was that age, I honestly didn't know anything was going on. Like all I knew was mom's sick and that sucks. And I didn't know if I was going to see her again because as we had 42 doctors in the US tell my mom that she was not going to live past 6 months. And my dad didn't accept that. And neither did my mom. And so they found treatment, and the only place in the world that did it at that time was China. And so they left. And I still vividly remember the day they left. I was in my school uniform. I went to a private school. And so we had to wear these, like, I guess, little vest suits every day. It's kind of funny. But I was wearing that standing on the top steps, and I was like, "Where's mom and dad?" And I realized they'd already left. And so I ran out the door and watched them as they drove off. And that was like a really kind of, I think, turning point at a very young age of who knows if I'll see my mom pull back in the driveway again.
Wow.
But luckily she is still with us, and I love her so much. So yeah.
So would you mind picking a lesson or something that you've taken from both your mom and your dad? I think that in the brief story that you shared, your mom obviously still being your mother while being ill, but your dad also kind of helping you become a man at the same time, saying like, I'm going away. Walk me through what lessons that you've learned, not only from that age, but as you've grown up, some of the most impactful things that your parents have taught you.
Yeah. I guess I'll start off with what my mom's taught me is love everyone and being a peacemaker. I mean, you said, my mom, she's like the sweetest lady ever and so kind, and never raises her voice. And so I'd say being like a peacemaker and loving others, that is a big lesson I learned from my mom. And then I've learned so much from my dad, and he's always been an entrepreneur. And so I think, I'm just trying to think what the best thing I could say is.
Don't even isolate it to the best, but something that comes to mind that maybe it was as of recent or something that's he's just instilled in you as you've grown up. Maybe a repeated lesson that he's taught. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have these repeated lessons that their parents teach them that are important to the parents at that moment of time. Is there something that your dad has repeatedly tried to ingrain into your brain?
I would say belief. I'd say both my parents have always believed in me, and they've always believed that I can do amazing things. But I think we've had so many conversations over the years. And I mean, we even had one about 10 minutes ago, right before I jumped on this call, of him just telling me, "Hey, I know you're going to be great." And so I think that belief that he has in me has carried over to the belief that I have in myself.
Very cool. I love that. Thank you. I think our parents are oftentimes not given the proper credit that they deserve in forming
Yeah.
not only entrepreneurs but also members of society, and I just don't want to forget that. Very cool. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your background. Now as we dive into more of the business side of things, what what is your mission? Why entrepreneurship? Why not a 9 to 5? Why not something more traditional? Why something so painful like entrepreneurship?
Honestly, I would say that the painful thing is a 9 to 5 job. I like 2 years ago when I got back from my mission, I had my mind set on I wanted to get into the storage facility or even mobile home parks like industry. And we actually even talked for a little bit there about starting our own storage facility thing. And it just kind of it didn't feel right. I went and I was working at a storage facility for a couple months, doing the 9 to 5 thing there, and I learned a ton. And the people I worked with were great, but that didn't really feel right. And so then I kind of switched gears. I was doing a little bit of door-to-door sales, but I had a friend that was doing inside sales with Vivint, and he told me they had a great training and that the team he was on was super awesome. And so I decided to give it a try. I went through the training. Then I finally get into doing my job, and it's my first week of actually doing it. So I'd been at the company for like a month. The training is a month long, 2 weeks of training, and then 2 weeks of on the phones training. So it was my first actual day. It's about 7:15 in the morning. My shift started at 7. I'm sitting there, and not a single call had gone to me yet. I had signed in. I was doing everything, and the calls just like kept skipping. And I was like getting really irritated of just the repetitiveness of sitting at a desk and working for somebody else. I'm like, I could be doing this at home, or start my own thing. So I literally, after being there for like 20 minutes, I packed up my bags and I left, and I called a family friend that was doing solar in Texas, and he was trying to recruit me before, when I was still working at Vivint. And I was telling him, no, I'm working at Vivint. This is what I'm doing. And I realized, you know what, I don't want to be doing this 9 to 5 working for somebody else. I didn't like it. And so I call him up right when I leave and I say, hey, I just left my job. I'm coming to Texas. And so then he books me a flight that same day. I go home, I pack, I fly to Texas. The next 2 weeks, I was selling in Texas and I came home with 20 grand. So it was like
Wow.
I was going from making like maybe a couple thousand a month to I just made 20 grand in a week. And I'm like, there's so many ways to make money in the world, and you don't have to be working for somebody else. And I realized that was like the painful thing to me, was going in. And then I know there's a lot of people that they like the security of it, and that how whether or not like you're doing everything that you should be doing, you're still going to be getting a paycheck, and that's great. But I couldn't live like that. It was not what I wanted to do.
Got it. So take me from Texas to where you are now. Walk me
Yeah.
through everything you've done.
So from Texas, I came home. I was a little unsure of what I should be doing, and so I decided to go to school for a little bit. I feel like today that's just what you do when you're our age, when you're in your early 20s and you don't know what you're doing with your life. Most people just will go to college. That's what I did for about a year. And I was going to study accounting or finance. And then I was switching gears to kind of marketing. And then this February, I was in classes and I couldn't take it anymore. And so I dropped out and started a software marketing company. My brother's an affiliate with this other company, and so I signed up and just started working. And now we have a business where we do software marketing for door-to-door sales guys, because I had experience in that field and I know a lot of people and tons of connections.
Got it. Cool. And so it seems to me that you went from, so obviously you've changed your environment a ton, even going back to your younger years where you moved to Florida, then you moved back to Utah, you moved to Arizona, you went on a mission, you went back to Utah, you went to sell for Vivint, you went to sell in Texas, you went back to school, and then now you're starting your own company. It seems like you've constantly been changing. And if listening to this with an untrained ear, I would say that you can't keep your mind, you can't make up your mind, you can't keep things straight. But in reality, I've learned you keep changing until you find something that just works. Warren Buffett, you and I talked about this on Monday. Warren Buffett said, "It's not how hard you row; it's the boat you're in."
Yep.
And you keep rowing until you find your winning boat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so to kind of challenge you a little bit, why is this different? How do you see this, what you're doing right now, any different from staying in Texas, for example, or staying in school? Why is this different?
That's a good question. I would say what I'm doing right now is different because I have my whole heart and focus in it. Whereas if had decided back when I was working with Vivint and those calls weren't coming through when they should have been, and I was like getting agitated, if I just stayed, I would be in a completely different spot now. I wouldn't have had my experience in Texas. I wouldn't have had the experience in school. And I mean, like you said, people can look at what I've been doing with my life the past several years or even my whole life and think I can't really stay in one spot for too long or keep a commitment. But the way I look at it is I'm just weeding out as fast as I can all the stuff that I don't want to do. And with what I found right now that I'm doing, there's been some really cool spiritual experiences where I know that this is the way that I'm going to make my money. And this is what I'm going to be doing for um, pretty much the rest of my life with this business. And other business opportunities that arise.
Got it. In the past, me personally, I've shied away from touching on that. Not because I'm afraid to, just because it's not generally a topic that I dive into. But I feel like I should. Would you mind telling me an experience that changed you from a time you served in your mission? Where did you serve? What were you doing? And can you share an experience with me that changed you to who you are today?
Yeah, the first
First off,
experience,
where
I
were
guess that
you?
yeah,
Where did
good
you go?
question. I served in Berlin, Germany,
Okay.
and the experience that always comes to mind whenever anybody asks something kind of like that is back in 2020 in March when COVID hit the world and shut everything down and changed everyone's lives and how everyone views life. I was in this smaller town. It wasn't really a small town. It's called Bielefeld. I'd been there for about 6 weeks, and well, actually, that's not true. I was only there for 2 weeks when quarantine hit. And if you know anything about the Church of Jesus Christ, when COVID hit, basically all the missionaries went home. Um, I did not go home. They kept most of the European missionaries, so about a third of my mission went home, and I stayed. And those first 2 weeks of me being in that area, I was with this companion that I lived with, and he was the hardest companion I had had up until that point. I still remember the very first week I had put into my calendar the day that that transfer ended because I was hoping that either he would be transferred or I would be transferred or something would happen where I don't have to be with this kid, just me and him. But of course, the next week we hit quarantine, and now for the next 9 weeks, it's just me and him all day, every single day in our apartment. We can't leave. We can go on a 30-minute walk each day, right? And then a one-time grocery trip on our P days on Monday. And so I'm in like the worst experience or worst place possible that I could be in when COVID hit. And rather than really like being pissed off and mad at the situation, I tried to do everything I could um, to help this kid out. And the reason why I didn't like him, it wasn't like he's super nice kid, um, super amazing. He just didn't believe in himself, and it was just from how he grew up. His parents had never really put that belief in him, and he was always really nervous to make a phone call and never knew what to say. He would sit there staring at the phone for like 5 minutes, and I wouldn't say anything. And I'm like, "Are you okay? Like, are you gonna call him?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm just thinking what to say," and it really like bothered me because I'm somebody that like just go out and do it, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're gonna have to learn somehow. And so it was just really hard for me. And um, anyways, we had many conversations every day where we would just kind of break down our relationship, and I would really tear into this kid. Like I was ruthless sometimes, but like the conversations always ended with a lot of love and hugging it out. And anyways, by the time I was transferred, um, there's actually a couple of cool things that I told him because he was the type of kid that um, he wanted recognition. And like in the missions, there's these zone leaders who are in charge of like a big group of missionaries, or the trainers who train the brand new missionaries that come in. And he was like dead set on doing that at some point in the mission. And I told him, I said, "Hey, Elder Naylor, at some point in your mission, you will train and be a zone leader at the same time." And um, the next week, we got a transfer call that we were picking up a brand new missionary and that we were going to be zone leaders together. And so it was like the craziest thing because I just told him, like, "You're going to do this." And then it happened a week later when I was with him. And after I finally left that area, I was sitting down with my mission president. And he asked me, he's like, "What did you do to Elder Naylor?" He's like, "He actually looks me in the eye in the interviews now. He has this new light about him. He's different," basically is what he told me. And I had no answer at the time for my mission president. But looking back, I realized that rather than just sitting there and moping and saying, poor me, why does this have to happen to me? I have some of my best mission buddies. They're in a 4-man apartment together, all 4 of them, and I'm like, they're probably living it up right now, but I went through hell basically, and I learned so much, and it turned out to be the greatest time on my mission. And so I think from that, just taking opportunities and embracing them, whether good or bad. And this one, at that time in my life, it was like pretty bad. I wouldn't say the worst, but it was really hard for me, but I embraced it. And I think that's changed my perspective on a lot of things in life.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love
Yeah.
hearing about missions, and that's a very cool experience. Thank you for sharing that. It's cool. Awesome. So next question. So now I kind of jumped back into your past a little bit. I kind of want to dive into the business aspect. I kind of want to learn who Weston was, what kind of characteristics made up Weston. And now let's get into the dog of Weston, because I know Weston's, you're a super nice, friendly, cuddly guy on the outside, but I know you got a dog in you. So you oftentimes, I'm going to tell a quick story, a story that I have told very few people, and it's honestly a landmark story in my life. Okay.
Okay, let's
So
hear it.
this is directly about you. So our senior year of high school, Weston and I were in an entrepreneurship class. And before entrepreneurship, this entrepreneurship class, I hardly, my dad was an entrepreneur, but I really had no personal entrepreneurship experience myself. We were given a pine cone on the first day of school, and the teacher basically said, by the end of the semester, turn this pine cone into $1,000 and you'll get an A in the class. Pretty simple. Now it sounds simple with everything. Like it's kind of cool to think now that sounds more simple, but as a 17-year-old, that was like the craziest thing I'd ever heard. And so I wasn't necessarily, I didn't have the heart of an entrepreneur, but I knew how to hustle. So I took this pine cone, I traded it. I made like $25, and I went to the Home Depot store. I pulled like almost an all-nighter, putting together little PVC pipes, and I would sell them on Facebook for $25. And I was hustling and hustling and hustling, and I made like $300. And at the point of the class, this was like the most money anybody had ever made in a 48-hour period. I was so proud. I was on top of the world. I was like, this is like, I am the top dog. And Weston called me the night before we were supposed to turn in this first assignment with the pine cone. He's like, dude, how much money did you make? And I was like, dude, I made $300. And he was like, Weston was just the most excited for me. He was like, man, that is incredible. Like, congrats. Like, that was so cool. Like, good job. Just hyping me up. Like, I thought Weston was the coolest guy. I still do. So to get that compliment from him just put me on top of the world. Well, the next day, I show up to class, and Weston plopped down like $350 or $400. He was barely beating me on purpose. And to me, it was just like there's always somebody out there working just as hard, if not harder than I am. And the way Weston did it was super unique. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story was that Weston, even though on the outside he may be like the nicest, kindest guy, I know that he's out there to win. And that was something I've never forgotten. And even though we haven't necessarily talked as often as we should have, I've always kept that story in the back of my mind that whenever I'm not working, there's another Weston out there that's working just as hard as me to try to beat me in something. And that's just honestly what keeps me going a lot of times. So first off, thank you for teaching me that valuable lesson. I've never forgotten that.
Hey, I want to cut in, and there's a few things about the story that aren't exactly so. The pine cone, we were supposed to, it was in one weekend, so 3 days we were supposed to come up with as much money as we could. And then it wasn't only a couple $100 more than I brought than McKay. I made $1,500 in that weekend.
That's right. That's what it was. So but that okay, that actually makes another point is, to me, like $300 was like, I could not think bigger than that. That was the craziest thing. Like $300 in 72 hours. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's crazy. And to hear that somebody made $1,500, like, that just told me that Weston thinks on a different level, and I need to learn how to get there. I didn't tell myself I couldn't get there, but I need to learn how to get there. And so, why do you think so big? Where did it come from? And how do you answer that call to your own thoughts of, I need to be bigger, better, badder, faster, make more money than?
Yeah, good question. I honestly attribute a lot of it to my dad. A saying he's always said is no asky, no giddy. And so basically I came up with the price $1,500 in my head, and that's what I was gonna get. And so that's what it ended with. And growing up, every single New Year's, even when we were like 7 years old, 6 years old, like super young, we had to set goals. And basically my dad said, there's no limit. And you set whatever goals you want. And so I'd come up with these goals that I was going to have a private island, neighboring my brother's private island. We would have a zip line going across to each other. And so basically what my point is, we, from a very young age, I've always dreamt big. I've always thought, you know what, I can do great things. And so that's, I guess, where that belief mindset came in, was from a very young age, is goal setting. So, and I think that's a huge thing is, every time my dad sat us down to set goals, he said, the number one rule of goal setting is there are no rules. And so from there, you go wherever you want. And there's a famous Michael Jordan quote. He says, whatever the mind can perceive, it can achieve. So whatever you believe in your mind, you'll be able to achieve it, whatever it is, you know? And so I think just having that ingrained in your brain and just knowing whatever it is that I want, I can have it.
Very cool. Walk me through a little bit of your business model now, your startup, and walk me through the beginning stages, because you've been working on it since February, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was step one? Where did the idea come from, and how did you get started? How did Because honestly, I talk to a lot of people that want to think big. They're what people call entrepreneurs. They want to
Yeah.
do something. They want to think. They want to do this. How did you decide to do it? And what with that, how did you decide to do it? And if somebody that is a entrepreneur and wants to become an entrepreneur, what would advice would you give?
Yeah, I would say the thing that separates a entrepreneur from an entrepreneur is fear. And that doesn't mean that starting your own company, there's not like some fear aspect to it. Because obviously it's like I'm out of pocket on everything, and I have to pay all my living still, and this and that. And it wasn't until just recently that we started getting paying customers. But overcoming that fear is really what sets the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur apart, because there's a lot of people, and I have a lot of friends that say someone's going to make a lot of money on AI. And then they sit back and then they start scrolling on Instagram, or like, oh, did you see this funny video? But like the comments, like, someone's going to make a lot of money on AI. So why not be you? You know, I've said that to a lot of friends, like, yeah, someone is. So like, why don't we do it? And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and so I think there's like this fear of not knowing. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. Um, like this software that I'm doing, I didn't know jack squat about it before I started doing it. My brother, my oldest brother, he's been doing it for about 10 years. Every time I asked him what he did, I never understood it. And anytime a friend, like a family friend or somebody else asked me, hey, like, what is your brother doing for work? I never could explain to them. I'd say, I honestly have no idea, but I know he's doing good. And so I think just getting over the fact that you're not going to know anything when you start. You like, do you think Elon Musk knew like a whole lot when he was starting wherever he started, you know, like I'm sure, yeah, he went to school and like had all this knowledge beforehand and stuff, but it's like there's a lot of people that they don't know when they start that, like Tesla and SpaceX is down the road. You know, it's like they have that dream maybe, but it's not until you start in getting over that fear, because it's like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Just map out what is the absolute worst thing that can happen if I start doing this. And if the absolute worst thing is too much for you to bear, then don't do it, right? And there's a lot of things that you can start while still having a 9 to 5 job. You can have that 9 to 5, and then afterwards, that's when you are working on um, all your other things that you're doing, right? But just write down, map out what is the worst thing possible that could happen to me by starting this business or starting whatever it is that you want to start. And if it is too much for you to bear, don't start it yet. Wait. But if it's something that you can handle and something that you can get over, then there's nothing stopping you, and you just need to get going.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Did you have any fear starting this new company?
Um,
This isn't
no.
like a yeah, okay.
Yeah, I honestly didn't. My oldest brother, like I said, he's been doing it for 10 years. I had another brother that started working on stuff similar to it last year at some time, and so then It's actually funny. I called up my brother that I'm closest in age to. He's the one that started working on it last year at some point, and but he was kind of working underneath my brother. But I call him up. I'm like, hey, I just started up my own company. He's like, I did too, and it was literally the exact same day that we both
Wow.
started our own companies without even knowing it, and which was kind of crazy. So it was like kind of like a race to who was gonna. It wasn't like not a competition, but it was just like pushing each other to see like, all right, who's gonna get the first sale? My brother got the first sale, and then it was months until I finally. It was just this last month, June, when I first got my first sale, and then I got 6 more like pretty soon after that. So then I passed up my brother. It's not a competition, but it's like it's fun to push each other, and we work off each other. We're in different markets. Yeah, I didn't have any fear when I started.
So you kind of, in the last 3 or 4 minutes, you've explained two types of people. You've explained the people that there's a lot of money to be made in AI. Look at this TikTok, right? And then you also
Mhm.
have this, call your brother, hey, guess what? I want to tell you something too. You go first. I started my company. No way, I did too. You have two different types of people. And I think largely the world is separated by those two types of people. I think it's pretty black and white. How
Mhm.
do you balance? Because I do believe there has to be a balance. How do you balance surrounding yourself with people that are the, hey, look at this funny TikTok, and the, hey, what business are you starting? That, how do you surround yourself with people that are like minded?
Yeah, it's a super good question. I'm gonna give a funny answer. Go watch Alex Hormozy on YouTube. He is a freaking beast. He does this thing, Gym Launch, and but now his main focus is helping young entrepreneurs start out and what they need to do in certain situations. But so I guess that's like a invitation to go watch him. But I would say the thing that comes to mind is that you are the average of the 10 people that you spend the most time with, right? And so if you are always with these people that are just, oh, somebody else is going to do it, or I'm just going to go and do this, or whatever it is that they do. If you're always spending time with them, you're going to be the average of that group. But if you surround yourself with people like McKay, and like McKay and I, we started like a mastermind with two of our other friends that we went to high school with. Josh Brown is one of them. McKay just did a video on him, but you want to find other people that have similar goals as you. Once you find those people, that's when you start working together. And like, even if you're McKay and I are doing completely different things, Josh Brown is doing a completely different thing. Our other friend Connor is doing something similar to Josh, but in his own way. And you don't have to be doing the same thing, but you have to have similar goals. You have to be ambitious, and just finding those people and surrounding yourself by those people. And if you don't have a lot of money, find the cheapest place to live, to get your life going, and sometimes it's taking risks on, or not risks, but like maybe not going to that movie when you probably shouldn't pay for that when you have to pay other bills or something like that.
So how do you find people that are like minded? Where do you go?
Dude, I have been blessed. I've been surrounded by people growing up that have ambitious goals. And so like for me, I don't have to look very far. There's gonna be other people maybe watching this video that might not know many people like that. And so I would say go watch McKay's very first video that he posted on this page. He went out and he was messaging Meet Kevin, and he Meet Kevin totally, he ghosted him, right? But McKay didn't stop. He went and he started grinding and doing his thing, and then Kevin finally took notice of him, and McKay moved out full time to um, California, working with Kevin, who would be an amazing person to be with every day, just someone at that caliber. And so I'd say, I mean, big question is asking McKay on how to do that. So
Thank you. I'll touch on that because I do think it's an interesting thing, because if it's like, hey, I live in the middle of the cornfields in Nebraska, like I don't have people around me that are successful. I think a huge blessing to social media is a parasocial relationship where it's like, it sounds so silly, but I had probably in the year of 2021, I spent more time with with Kevin than I had with any of my other friends. What I mean by that is I had spent hours and hours watching videos with Kevin, so I felt like watching videos of Kevin teaching, instructing, and I had just felt like this, not sound cheesy, but like a connection. Like I felt like I was in the room with him and learning with him. You mentioned
Mhm.
Alex Ramosi. Like we can draw inspirations from these people and almost feel like we are their friends and we are surrounded by them. Um, but again, do you want to watch a podcast about business or do you want to watch 2 hours of funny TikToks? It's your choice, right?
Yep.
Because both of those worlds still exist on social media. It's what does your algorithm feed you, right? If
Yep.
anybody wanted to start a business, I would go to their YouTube homepage and I'd refresh it. What's the first thing that pops up? Is it try not to laugh memes or is it the newest Alex Ramosi podcast? That will tell you
Yeah.
so much in who you want to be, and what how you spend your time. So I think you bringing up that point of surrounding yourself with people. I think that you can do it on social media if you feel like you don't have anybody near you.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great point.
Cool. Thanks. And where is Weston going from here? I know that's a super. I know asking you because things are always changing in a good way.
Yeah.
Kevin calls it flip flopping, and he changes his mind a lot. But he says he always changes his mind for the better.
Yep.
Where walk me through if you. I want to do something. I've never done this with a guest. I was actually going to do this exercise with me personally, um, but I want you to take 2 minutes, and I want you to take 120 seconds and talk to yourself. Say hi, Weston Wardrop. Where I hope you are in 10 years. How old will you be and where do you want to be in 10 years? And I want you to talk like you're giving advice to your younger self. Like if you're
Yeah.
22, if you're 32, talk to yourself like you're 22. Where do you want to be in 10 years?
I'd say, Weston, you have an amazing wife with amazing kids, and you live in a great home. You have a great life, and I would tell him to keep doing what you're doing right now, and keep believing, and always have an open mind, and never close off any opportunity that comes to you, even if at first you might not think it's very plausible or something that you should be doing right at that time. Have an open heart and an open mind, and trust God, and yeah, trust God, because he's watching out for you, and he has a plan, and his plan is greater than any plan that you have.
Good. Thank you. If now, where's Weston in 6 months?
Yeah, I think um, after some meetings I had today, Weston in 6 months is um, heading up two different businesses, the one I'm working on right now, and another one that I think could change a lot of people's lives and help a lot of people. Um, basically what we're trying to work on is um, a university of like an online university of teaching people how to use AI and how to get control of it so that we can then place them in jobs where they have a lot of experience, or not necessarily experience, but a lot of knowledge on how to control AI and use it to their benefit. And um, yeah.
Cool. I like that. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to call you in 6 months. Hopefully we can be in the same room, but I want to see
Good.
where Weston is in 6 months.
Hey, we will be. We'll be down in Florida.
Let's do it. If you could spend a day with an entrepreneur, past, present, or somebody that you admire in the business world, who would you spend a day with, and what questions would you ask him?
I I would spend the day with Henry Ford.
Okay, why?
Um, I I think it's really amazing what he did to the automobile industry way back when. He totally introduced the like assembly line for automobiles, and there's a story, and I'm like 99% sure this was Henry Ford. It could have been somebody else, but um, there was a lawsuit against him, and they had the I don't even know what they call it, the lawyer that's like going after him.
The prosecutor.
The prosecutor. Yeah, the prosecutor was asking Henry Ford all of these super hard technical questions that the prosecutor was hoping Henry Ford wouldn't know the answer to. And so he asks the questions, and Henry Ford turns to one of his top C-level employees, and he turns and he says, "Will you answer that question for me?" And the prosecutor is like, "I asked you the question." And Henry Ford is like, "I don't know. I don't need to know the answer to that question because this man right here knows the answer to that question." And so it's like he knew exactly how to place people. He was the perfect leader. He has a great book. It's My Life's Work by Henry Ford. I listened to it last summer. I need to listen to it again, but he taught a lot of really good things within his business as well to all of his employees. Like he wanted all of his employees to have a great home life. He wanted them to be upstanding men and women, loyal to their families. And his questions that I would ask him would be like, what inspired you to create the company that you created? And not necessarily like just Ford Motors, but like really what it was inside of Ford Motors, what the outside world didn't see, with like having a focus on families, and um, also how he was able to hire the right men and put them in the right places to run such a successful company. And so I think there's a lot that he did that was really incredible. And obviously there were some things that weren't as smart, that he didn't want to produce a red car or a blue car. He just wanted them all to be black. And so some of his top guys eventually left the company, and they went and started their own company. I think that was when General Motors started. Um, but I would ask him, maybe, do you regret that decision of not wanting other colored cars to be produced? I mean, anything. Obviously, I'm not in the automobile industry, but anything can be applied to whatever industry you're in. So if you're ever looking for a mentor and they're in a different industry, it's totally fine.
Cool. I think that's super appropriate. Why do you told me you never leave your apartment. You told me that you're always working, you're always on phone calls. What motivates you? Why do
Yeah.
you want to why do you pursue what you're doing? I'm gonna interject because
Yeah.
in the Hey Weston in 10 years, it wasn't that it wasn't anything. I gave you a little notice about that question, but it wasn't anything that I would have deemed insane. It all seemed very modest and normal. What motivates you to achieve such high excellence and think so high?
Yeah. I believe we have a great potential, each and every person. And so I think if I just sat back and didn't really do much, I wouldn't be reaching that potential. And I think there's a lot of people that get to a certain point in their life where they feel like they look back and they say, man, I wish um, I should have done this, or I could have done more. And they're not happy with where they're at. And so I think what motivates me is that sense of accomplishment, of hard work. Like you worked so hard and now you're so tired, but you've accomplished it, and you can sit back and, I guess, reap the reward, right? It's never too exciting in the moment. Like my days, they get very repetitive, and it's like, holy crap, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's so tiring, it can get boring, and um, starting companies not always that exciting. The idea is great, the idea is exciting, but carrying through every single day is really hard. But I think what really motivates me is the one day I'll be able to say, you know what, I accomplished something great.
That leads into a lot of what I've been really thinking about. A lot of my audience that knows, and maybe even you heard this with my podcast with Josh, is I've really been meditating on the concept of, like, I don't care what happens today. I don't care what happens tomorrow. I don't care what happens in 2 weeks. Like, I want to build something that I'm proud of in 10 years. I
Hmm.
want to build something and work as hard as I can. So in 10 years, I can look back and be like, I am proud of that. Like, I worked, I did not sleep. I gave everything I had to build that. And what that is could be
Hmm.
a number of different things. Do you think, what are your thoughts on that? And do you share something similar?
I mean, I have a lot of friends I look and see what they're doing this summer, and they're like in Europe and doing a ton of fun things. But yeah, I think it means a lot more down the road than it does today. Like yeah, like I was saying, it's not always fun and it's pretty grindy, but like it means a lot at the end of the day, like when you've accomplished what you've been working towards, and when you've accomplished it, like there's no better feeling than saying I worked, I gave it my all, and now I can reap that reward. I guess I
Do you
don't
feel
know if
like
that
you
answers your
Yeah,
question, but
that's good. Do you feel like you have a chip on your shoulder? I Do you feel like you have a chip on your shoulder? And if so, where does it come from and why?
Um, I think there might be a little chip.
From what?
I Yeah, so right when I started this company, I reached out to one of my young men's presidents that I had growing up, and he was a very successful guy with Vivint. He was one of their really early on sales guys that became one of the two that was in charge of all of the sales at Vivint. And then when they sold, he made a good chunk. But I went to him, and because I'd grown really close with this guy when I was in middle school, in high school, before I moved to Arizona. I was waking up at 4:30 every morning to get to the gym by 5 with him to work out before school and before everything before my day. And so like I built this really strong connection with him, and I texted him. Like, hey, do you have time to meet? I have this new business idea. I kind of gave him a general idea, and then um, he didn't really like listen to me. He just kind of was like, "I think you're chasing the wrong market," and he like didn't explain. And I'm like, I don't think he really understood what market I was actually going after, because you couldn't really gather that from my message I sent. And then he was texting me back, basically as if he now has the upper hand, and saying like I have plans of like basically doing what I'm doing. And he's like, I have plans, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it yet, but like I'll let you know. And like basically saying he would be nice enough to have me like working with him, and that I would be lucky to be working with him doing what his big idea was. And it was interesting. I went kind of not really behind his back, but I have a buddy that's works more closely with him right now. And I was like, dude, like, what's his big secret that he has? And when he told me, I'm like, I literally I laughed, because I'm like, that is literally fully a part of my business model, what I'm doing. And so like he didn't listen to me. And then he tells me he has this idea nobody's ever thought of. And then when I finally hear it, I'm like, really, dude? Like, no, like that I had that idea. I talked to my brother that's been doing this for several years. He's like, he's like, yeah, I've had that idea too, like a couple years back. And so I was like, it was nothing new. And if he had just like sat down and listened to me, then we could have been working together, or like he could have placed me in some really good spots. But then I decided that I was going to go to who he competed with at Vivint when there was the two guys in charge of sales. And so I went to the other guy and I presented to him. It was my first time ever talking to the dude. My dad knew him, and so I had that connection that way. But I went to his house. I showed him everything that I'm doing, told him my business plan, and he said, this is great. I love it, and I think there's a huge market for this in that space. And so I don't know if I've mentioned yet, I do software marketing for door-to-door sales reps, and with a focus on the solar industry. But anyways, he loved it, and he said, go and get as many users as you can. I want you to prove this in market. And he's like, I'll place you in front of all the C-level guys at Vivint Solar, Ion Solar, all these big solar companies. And so I think that chip that I had from talking to like this guy that I thought would be really open and willing to meet with me and talk about it, who then kind of like shut me down. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't need you. I never needed you. I just wanted to see if this was something like plausible or something good. And but I'm just going to go and make it happen. So I think there's a little bit of a chip, but it's not something I think about every day.
That's Well, it's a really. How did that feel to have not only your business idea shut down by him, but to
Yeah.
have a mentor that you had gotten so close to, um, not kind of get hostile with the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, right? It's like you go in with a certain expectation, and I think that's a huge important if there's any takeaway, sometimes the people that you think are going to be the most supportive are not the most supportive. And the people who you don't even know are going to be very supportive, right? Like it sucked super bad. I was like I was like hurt, but I didn't let that like affect anything about what I was doing. I didn't let it affect my life in any way. It was just from right there, I said, you know what? He lost his opportunity to work with me, right? It's
Yeah.
like, although he's this super successful dude, and it's like last October, I met with him one day. He tells me, yeah, I made $500,000 today. It's like a guy like that you look up to, makes tons of money. You just got to switch your focus and your brain and the way you think, because now what I say, you know what, he is the unlucky one. He's the one that doesn't get to work with me, and I don't really want him to be a part of any business that I do down the road because he didn't have that initial belief and faith in me. And so I'm like, I still love him, and it's not going to affect our personal relationship, but I said, you know what, I can be my own man. I can make it on my own.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's a great story. That's a piece of gold right there that I will go back and reference because I think that's powerful because it perfectly encapsulates one of the things that's one of my favorite lessons from Elon Musk. It's kind of a sinister quote, but Elon said, if you need inspiring words, don't do it. Meaning, like, if you need somebody else's outside voice to motivate you to do something, don't do it. And I'm not saying you did, but the idea was a good enough idea in your mind and in your soul that you were like, I don't care what he says. Like, I just wanted his input. I didn't even get that. I'm going to keep going. And so,
Hmm.
rather than him saying, "Oh, I don't think it's a good idea. Don't do it," you had two options. You could say, "Oh, he's right. I'm not going to do it. I need his inspiring words." Or you said, "No, I'm going to go find your competitor. I'm going to ask your
Yep.
competitor what he thinks, and then I'm going to kill it, and then he'll give you a hug after and tell you I love you." Like that. That to me is just like the ultimate. I don't know. That gets me
Yeah.
excited. That's what I love. It is that aspect. I have a couple
Yeah.
more questions for you. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, if you're always waiting on other people and to get stuff done, or if you're always waiting for other people to do something, you're never going to get anywhere in life. You just have to get going. Like
Yep.
McKay, we had a call on Monday. We set goals for this week, and I said I want to get 10 new clients on my company. And then I changed that goal because that next day at like 11 a.m., I booked flights to Florida to go and sell to a solar team in Florida. So I said, you know what? I'll move that back to next week. Um, I'll get those. I'll get more than 10 next week. And this week, my new focus is building out a great sales pitch, like on a slide deck, and also I had other things that I need to finish up with this other client that I have. So, anyways, you set goals and you just need to make it happen. So it's like rather than trying to do some just one-on-one calls, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go fly out there and speak to 20 guys all at once and try and sign all 20 of them. So
Very cool. Dude, I love it. That's awesome. Okay, I got two more questions for you. You've already been extremely generous with your time, so thank you for that. You and I were in the same entrepreneurship class, not the actual like hour period, but the same general class our senior year. We often had guest speakers come speak to us as seniors in high school when we were 17 years old. If you could tell a group of 17-year-olds in an entrepreneurship class, people that have chosen to sit in the seat to learn about entrepreneurship, what's something that you would tell them?
yeah, I'm thinking back to that class, and I think there was a lot of people in there that didn't necessarily care to be there. It was a very small amount of the class, like me and you and Josh, that were actually like had our mindset on being entrepreneurs and going out and doing it on our own. Whereas most people were just, oh, it's just another elective that I can take to check off one of the boxes for school. So I would say I would tell them to just write down everything that they want to accomplish in life and to do it, basically. I mean, I remember there was one kid in specific. He was on our football team, Mikey, I think it was his name. He was a running back. He came from a really rough background. And I remember my dad had like a one-on-one interaction with him where he's like, well, he comes outside with my dad and he sees my dad getting in his car. He's driving a Tesla and he was like mind blown that there was like a Tesla there. And I would just say, open your mind and the sky's the limit, and you can make whatever dreams you want come true. It doesn't matter where you started in life. I mean, some of you may have heard David Goggins' story. He has one of the roughest upbringings ever. And I'm not going to build my life out like he did. He's too intense for me. But like he came
Who's going to carry the boats, Weston? Who's going to carry the boats?
I know. I'm like, David can carry the boats for me. But wherever you grow up, that has no effect on your future, right? You make the future what you want it to be. And so dream big and chase after your goals, whatever they might be.
Very inspiring. Thank you. All right. Last question. Okay. I asked this to all of my guests. I try to ask it to all of my guests. What piece of advice do you have for me? I'm 23 years old. I work as hard as I can during the day to try to build these companies that I hope to be multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm trying my absolute best to. I spend my evenings and nights working on building my own personal brand. Mm-hmm. And what pieces of advice do you have for me with what you've seen me do and what you think I can do?
Dude, those of you watching that don't know McKay, he is literally the hardest worker ever. Like football practice sometimes was like, it would be so tough and McKay just like powered through it. Like we had, there are some times when they wanted to just work us so hard and they're like just getting us ready for state and stuff. And they would give us the most rigorous workouts and this and that, making us stay longer. And McKay always was like, bring it on, baby. Like always so stoked for any trial. And so I'm like, I mean, you probably have more that you could give me advice.
That wasn't the question, Weston. You are a very smart guy. I want something that I can, you've already given me a lot that I can walk away from, but I want to be personally held accountable.
I would say get control of AI in with whatever you're doing. And that's very like a biased point of view, but almost not biased at all, because we see everything that's coming out with AI and it's changing the world. If you don't have control of it, then you're going to be out of a job, you know? And so finding a way to incorporate that into your podcast, into House Hack, into all your other businesses that you're working on, how can you automate it? Just think, how can this be easily automated and to make my life easier, right? Like us as entrepreneurs, we work these crazy hours, we work super hard and it's all on our own time, but AI just boosts that. Like there was a day I remember where I was like really struggling to keep working. It was like super hard. I was just like in a rut and I'm sitting there eating lunch and I get a notification from like my company that like all my systems that I set up, because I'm using it myself to get solar leads. Well, for my brother will go and close them and then we split the commission. And I get a message on my phone that says, hey, this dude just filled out a survey, call them to get their like power bill. So I'm like, it was like a really rough day. I hadn't gotten like anything done. And AI was just getting the job done for me. Like we ended up closing that deal and we're going to make a couple grand on it. And so it's like, get control of AI, because AI doesn't sleep. It doesn't need to be paid. It doesn't drink. It doesn't poop or pee or whatever. You know, it constantly is working for you, and it can take on as many projects as you give it at a time. And it's amazing. So I would say figure out how to get control of AI with what you're doing.
Awesome. That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. I will apply it, and I will, hopefully you can see it in my work. I do think that's it's a good point to make, and it's a good reminder, because sometimes I get frustrated with the AI currently. I'm like, I was going to do it myself, but I think that's a good point. And so thank you for sharing that. Well,
Yeah,
listen,
man.
I know you don't hold yourself out there too publicly, but if somebody wants to get in contact with you, or if somebody wants to, for whatever reason, is there an email address or is there something that somebody could get a hold of you if they had a solar lead or something like that, or if they want to
Yeah.
work with you in your business?
Yeah, you could just maybe follow me on Instagram. I mean, I have a private account. Most people that don't look too sketchy, I'll accept them. You get some weird accounts trying to follow you sometimes, but
True.
yeah, maybe Instagram. My handle is just Weston Wardrop. Or if you wanted to email my company, it goes straight to me. It's support@homepro.software. So then I get those emails as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Weston, this has been super inspiring, and I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about who Weston Wardrop is, what makes him tick, why he thinks so big, and why you earned $1,500 and I only earned 300. And I hope that people can take the lessons that we've talked about today, and not only the other people but myself, and apply them into what we're doing. So thank you for sharing all of that, Weston. If you have any questions, he just gave you his contact information. If you guys haven't yet, consider subscribing. Leave a comment about what you learned that you can apply to your life. And like always, see you next time. Thanks for watching.